As you can see, we've had the French deploy. They're all situated across here. It's a fairly defensive setup, so I'll just walk around so we can see what they're doing. They've kept 2 brigades off table as reserves. So what we've got here, there's a Young Guard brigade sitting in here. They've put their Port Brigade commander sitting in here. You can see him sitting in there. There he is. He's in charge of a big artillery battery. They were sort of hoping that there would be Russians or Allies sitting on that hill, which they are not. They've actually deployed behind the hill. The Allies actually put a marker up here as a decoy, and that fell pretty much the way it should be. The French actually scouted it, got nothing, found there was nothing up there, and there was another marker sitting back behind the hill where the Prussian infantry deployed. So as we can see here, here is the other Young Guard brigade, and it's advancing towards the Prussians in that hill. Over here, another small French brigade coming up around the flank. There is 2 small Prussian cavalry regiments. I will slowly zoom in. That is a small landwehr unit, and that is a small dragoon. There are Prussian Landwehr Brigade, Prussian Line, Prussian Reserves. Over there is the rest of the Russians. Currently not engaged, as you can see. It's very much the French have opted to go purely on the left flank and leaving the right open. The reserves have actually come on the table. We actually don't know when. I'm an allied player, but we know there's something coming. We have placed a couple of these markers here to indicate where they're coming in. They're coming right over on the far right. Kind of interesting. I'm not sure I would have done that myself, but we will see what happens there. I'm just wondering what will occur. I think they're going to try and exploit the flank over there. That'll be an infantry brigade and their cavalry brigade coming on. Mind you, there is this stream here, so us allies have discussed whether to attempt to redeploy and force the hand here, or we'll just sit back and let them see what they can do. Either way, the work is on the French to actually get here and attempt the objectives. Now, if you're not familiar with the scenario, the objectives are 2 of the towns, or a town and that large hill over there. As we can see, they've only got 2 brigades to attempt the hill. There is large batteries sitting on these hills. So that's a 12-pounder battery sitting up there, which has actually been pounding this battery. It has 4 casualties. What has occurred though is the Prussians with their battery sitting here way behind the hill, hiding from that lot, which is pretty hideous, I must admit, though they have been firing into this battery over here, and they are currently sitting on 6 casualties, which is pretty nasty. We'll have to do something about that, probably either withdraw it or use one of our caissons to remove some casualties. This French battery here though actually came up unlimbered as it moved up here. This battery over here, under a bold brigadier, sat there on artillery assault, and in the first move of the game rolled double 6 on the 2 CDs and an 11 on the standard battery fire. Even at long range we caused 5 casualties. Next round we put them up to a further 3. They're currently sitting on 7. They've already played 1 caisson to bring that down. It's looking pretty bad at the moment for that battery. I'm kind of hoping in the next turn or 2, the Prussians, which is me, will get to remove that battery from the game, which should make this attack here hopefully break up. That'll cause them to falter. So I expect the Young Guard, let's say they flee, yay! Probably not, but we've got veterans and grenadiers coming up here against line and reservists and recruits. So it'll be an interesting fight. But what I am dubious about is the use of, really, this is the hammer, and the other portion of the hammer is sitting in a defensive posture here. I was a bit surprised when they rolled very well on their scouting, and they did only scout the dummy, and they scouted the batteries over there. So they split it up a little. They got most of their scouting, and they opted to use their 40 centimetre deploy to actually just deploy these guns really close and leave the infantry brigade of 4 battalions sitting here in a defensive posture. Interesting move. The gun battery really is just punishing those guys over there. So they're going to have to move it fairly soon. We've only played 3 turns, so we'll see what occurs. Finally, the Allies have actually occupied the centre town. We actually deployed behind it just to see what would happen. We've actually gone in there now. It's only defended by reserves. Well, the reserve, morale-wise, that is. So the Russians are only reserve. You notice they do look like Prussians. We don't quite have enough Russians for this, but we're working on it. I think the French are being a little coy, very defensive in their setup. They've got 20 turns to knock this over. We're moving into turn 4. So it's going to get interesting. The Allies are being quite defensive. These skirmishers actually were up here originally, and as you can see, there's the Landwehr cavalry. Actually performed a nice little move down the hill, got to within 10 centimetres of those, forced them back, causing them a casualty, making them go unformed. What's interesting in the next move is, for me personally, I plan to put a forward order on that cavalry and hopefully charge those guns. So I'll get an extra 10 centimetres plus 2d6. And if I can get the guns, I'll force the skirmishers to move away from me. And if I can get to the guns with 7 casualties, I'm hoping the Landwehr can actually give them some pain and remove them from the table. If not, I'll do it with my guns in the next phase. It'll be based on how many ADCs we get. So we'll see what occurs. As you can see, there's a fairly large, substantial Hussar brigade sitting over there. We were trying to redeploy it across here, but knowing the fact that we are aware that there are reserves coming on, we may actually redeploy it to the far flank because we know that their cavalry is yet to appear, and they have probably at least the same number of cavalry as us on that flank. We have a slight advantage with the 2 smalls on the far flank, but they're only smalls. But still, they are cavalry and can cause some damage. So we'll look forward to what occurs this evening, and we'll see what happens, and I will be back later. Hi everyone, so we're back. We've played a few more turns. Again, I'm not going to film the turn by turn because it gets a bit hard when you're trying to umpire and do things. But I'll just walk you through where we are with Dresden. We are moving into turn 8 in the next session. So what's occurred here so far is as you'll see from the previous video, the French have moved backwards. I am surprised. They also have a bunch of squares sitting down here. They have formed square, mostly because they are very fearful of this small dragoon regiment of Prussians and the feisty Landwehr which have come forward. And this is following a glorious charge by these little fellas here. Landwehr Cavalry, now with 3 casualties. They charged a Young Guard battery, which was originally sitting around here, as you'll see from the previous earlier video. Got through to them, fought a melee. It was 3 dice versus 3 dice, based on casualties and morale. Prussians came up trumps, 2-1, forcing the battery to retreat. That forced the Young Guard. Felt a little vulnerable with the vicious Landwehr sitting amongst their ranks, but Landwehr quickly withdrew. Needless to say, this caused the entire brigade, from the French perspective, they decided that this was not a good thing, and they have backstepped for the last couple of turns. We had a rain turn. As you might be aware, Dresden suffered from heavy rain showers throughout the day, and a lot of the fighting was done just purely with bayonet. During the rain turn, visibility is dropped, there is no musketry, artillery is reduced to 40 centimetres, which is visibility in the heavy rain showers. The massive battery here, I had expected it to move during the rain turn to at least pivot to face that town and that battalion sitting over here, and then later on put some serious fire into it and try and knock it off, forcing it back, trying to do something. So far this flank has been very stagnant for the French. The Prussians are certainly not coming forward. They're sitting behind that hill. They're not going to put themselves in a position to get hit by that battery. So we will hold that flank at this point in time. The French have put 2 groups of skirmishers into the wooded area. The Prussians have come forward under skirmish tasking. We've also got an assault fire on the battery. We're putting some pressure on them. We're going to try and shoot them out to remove the skirmisher threat, and then become skirmisher dominant on the Allied right flank. I'll walk you around to the other side of the table here so you can see what's going on. In the centre, as you can see, it's a big gap. So over here, on the far side, you have more Young Guard. They have lost a battery, which was sitting in the middle, here, or over there. The Allies, with their artillery superiority on the left, have basically done counter battery after every turn, and over time have removed it from the play, which caused a fault result on them, which they've easily passed. So what I was sort of expecting in the future coming turns is the French batteries here will start punishing this battalion and this battalion. They seem very reluctant to actually move on the town, which is their objective, knowing full well they need at least 1 town and the heights here to achieve a victory for this scenario. They have 12 turns to achieve it, so it's going to take them at least, I'm going to say 3 turns to get up to that village and prep for an assault. So they have put no fire onto it thus far. Artillery fire against the towns, as we know in GDA2, is pretty ineffective, but nevertheless, dice are dice. So I've sort of said a couple of times to the guys, I said, I don't know why you're not just stop firing for the sake of it. You might set it on fire, you might be causing casualties. You need to actually start whittling this brigade down. There's only 4 battalions sitting in there. To their flank though, you have this mess, 6 battalions in line with a battery to the front. Further over, there's another 6 battalions which are now about to be engaged by the French. So the French reinforcements have come on, as we mentioned the last time. They came on, issued a Ford's order, moved as far as they could. He rolled exceptionally well. The second turn, he issued another Ford's order. He generated some good ADCs. He actually used one of the CNC taskings, and he has actually put them, as you can see here, in a attack position. So you can see what's going to happen here. This French centre battalion will be the lead, and they will attack the Russians. The Russians have seen this and fired volleys against that battalion from here and here. And as you can see, we have FD markers here. Both went to fire discipline, which is very advantageous in the coming turn when the French will launch the charge. So I suspect that the Russians let their powder get a little wet during the rain turn and got a bit panicked at the ferocity of the French advance. As you will also see here, the French have put 2 battalions in front of the Russian 12-pounder battery. The 12-pounders did fire this turn. Again, poor roll, actually causing a fatigue casualty result on himself. It's going to get rather interesting. It's in the balance here. I can see the French will also charge here. They've got the 7th Lancers. They're going to come screaming into this group. He's going to try and force them into square. Actually, I think he's going to hope that they fail. They certainly won't cause any damage. He's simply going to remove the reroll for this combat that's going to pursue. So he's actually got in a great position to get multiple rerolls. Russians will have only 1. This will either form square, they'll bounce, or if they don't, probably get ridden down. I would expect the rear support here to go to square. They've got 2 columns behind, so the 12-pounders are part of this flank brigade. If the French do win this, there's a fairly good chance they could actually take the hill. Their issue is they've only got 1 infantry brigade here. They are facing 2 brigades, 12 battalions against 6. Even if they push them back into a falter, if they fail and they start running, great, he'll have some breathing space. If not, it's still going to be a hard ask without any supporting infantry from over here. I mean, there is 1, 2, 4 brigades of infantry sitting on that far flank, all in a defensive posture, all at a significant distance from the Allied lines. Knowing full well the Allies won't cross the centre point because they're in defence. So it's going to get interesting. We do have, of course, the Allied Hussar Brigade sitting here. It is pretty much sat there the whole game. We've issued it with a redeploy. It is racing to the flank to try and intercept the cavalry or actually attempt to engage it in the coming turns. Needless to say, I think this is in the balance. The French could push through. I think our only option, well, it's a hard ask. The French have come forward. They do have an artillery battery, which they haven't unlimbered. He has considered softening him up, but he's basically come like a bull of the gate. They are fresh. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. They'll come in, I expect, with Elan, because they're in column. Fairly good chance the French should win this, but you just never know. If the Russians roll exceptionally well in the charges phase, they could easily hold that up. What I had expected, and we did have a bit of a after-action discussion, called the AAD, and I sort of said to my companions who are on the French side that I was surprised that they didn't pivot the guns and start attacking this, at least to start softening up and causing us to do something, because they've really caused us to do nothing over on this flank. Also, I sort of said, you know, one option was perhaps use the Young Guard Brigade, issue with the forwards order because it is outside 50 centimetres from any Allied formed unit, and get them into the lee side of this hill. And the discussion ensued that they were a bit scared of this battery. And again, we sort of said, well, if that battery does deploy and the infantry move backwards, you have got artillery superiority here at the moment, and we go to a counter battery mode. But they're probably at this stage allowing the Allies to dictate this flank. There's a lot of distance between us. The French artillery really have done not a lot considering how many there are. The poor young guard artillery at the back there, he's expended all of his divisional caissons on it to bring its casualties down to a reasonable level. It's still worn. It won't be doing any assault fire, but it's now sort of back in action. I guess it's the beauty of having the caissons handy. So but from an Allied perspective, we've forced them to do this. We've still got most of our caissons active. We have used two to recover this battery because it was getting remarkably close to falling apart. But I'd say the game is in the balance. The next turn will be interesting for here. I've sort of had a bit of a think. I mean, I would expect the French to win this square. We'll see a bounce. I think he'd love to charge the 12-pounders, but he obviously can't because he'll put the infantry assault on there. But if the turn after, if this is still here, I expect this 12-pounder battery is going to be definitely under some threat. So it's going to make the Allied player start thinking what he can do. We did discuss afterwards, we sort of stood here and thought, well, you saw them coming, and you saw them coming, you didn't move anything. He's sort of been caught out. He hasn't managed to get these 2 extra battalions into a position to help. He's just watched. We're probably going to pay a price for stagnation, but we'll see. But I'm looking forward to the next session, and I'll take that after the fact as well. We'll see you then.